I've written and spoken in the past about how some manufacturers have this kind of skin deep, almost veneer of heritage and legacy that they can tap into when they're talking about retro products. Certain Japanese manufacturers, there's no other way of dressing it up. They just didn't exist 100 years ago, even 60 years ago. Other manufacturers, it's an easier job for them to tap into their past, and I'm stood next to the largest production boxer twin BMW have ever made, which is cool. We're going to get to that. I'm on the launch of the BMW R18, but I think it's important for me to try and walk and talk you through the history of why I'm stood next to this bike, and where better than the actual building where the boxer story started. This rusty old engine over here that we're about to go and take a look at was built in this building 100 years ago. The boxer twin story started for BMW in 1918 when they were banned from making aeroplane engines for obvious reasons. Have a look if you don't know. Google what was going on back then. They weren't allowed to make aeroplanes anymore, which was where their roots laid, so they jumped into engine production and then motorcycle production. This boxer twin, serial number 25001, was the very first one that they ever made, and it was made in this actual building. They kind of syndicated it out. This weird looking thing up on the wall is called a Victoria. They were selling these engines to other guys, and that's where the story starts for the R18. But I need to come and show you a bike called the BMW R5. This bike was built in 1935, so when I was waffling over there about that skin deep veneer of heritage and retro that some manufacturers have to try and make work, for BMW the story is very, very real. This bike, and I'm hoping that if I stand here and point to these lines here, and then my editor cuts away to these lines here on the brand new R18 that I've been riding all day, you can see exactly where the styling cues have come from, where the heritage has come from. You know, this is a bike, like I say, that was built in 1935. If you look at the tank shape, I've basically been staring at a 16-litre version of this all day on a 2020 model. The pinstripes, one thick, one thin, the black paint, all of these beautiful little parts have come together to give us BMW's invasion of the cruiser class. So R18 is a typically classic layout, and I'm sticking with the R5 from 1935 just to show you a few more things before we go and look at the new version. This nickel-plated drive shaft that you can see here, that features on the new bike. You'll see it in a minute. And just the riding position and the general kind of look and feel of everything that's going on here. Take a picture with your eyes. Let's cut to the new bike and pick up the story. So here it is. It's massive. It's called the R18 for obvious reasons. 1800cc. It's the largest capacity. They're calling it a big boxer that BMW have ever made. It's a huge engine. Again, I'm just casting an eye over this after having looked at the R5 round there, and the design cues are huge. There's more crossover between this and a bike that was built over 70 years ago than I've seen from other manufacturers trying to link 2020 to 2010. Is outrageous. I'll give you some of the numbers. It costs 18,995 quid in this first edition trim. That's what they're calling this one. For your money, as standard, you get heated grips, ridiculous as it always seems to be with every BMW. 16-litre fuel tank, 91 horsepower. I hate chucking numbers at you, but 158 newton meters of torque. If you're in America, 1800cc is 113 cubic inches, so it sits right in between that Milwaukee 8, 107 and 114. It has traction control, it has rain, it has rock, and it has roll modes. So the three rider modes that you get as standard riding modes by David Hasselhoff, it would seem. Regardless, I spent all day today in the pissing rain. And the modes actually do work. Rain softens everything off, makes riding very, very easy. Roll is that kind of halfway house, and rock just sharpens everything up. So like I say, you do get ASC, the traction control. You can turn it off on the fly. You can flick between all those riding modes on the fly. You also get torque control. You get very easy to navigate through because it's very simple. There's nothing complicated about the dash on this. It's a single clock, a mix of analog and digital. You can scroll through and see what's going on. There isn't a massive selection of information to pick up on, but you can figure out how much fuel you're using, what the time is, what the day is, what gear you're in, and other marginally important functions. The elephant in the room, or the elephant in the Zimmer, making that up as I go along. The exhausts are pretty howling. Not many people like them, so the internet says. I've spent all day listening to them and looking at them, and they've grown on me a little bit. But as is the way with cruisers and custom bikes, accessorizing and choosing an exhaust to suit you with this bike is as easy as it was 5 or 10 years ago with a sports bike. You don't buy it or not buy it because of the exhaust. You're going to fit your own to it anyway. The range of accessories and parts for this bike is already massive. Roland Sands is involved. Vance and Hines are involved. Mustang have been involved with some of the aftermarket seats that you can pick. Not only are we just talking about the weird exhaust, I'm not going to call them ugly because I'm not convinced they are, but I'm just casting an eye over the various bits that after a full day I think I would change. These indicators are one of them. They just don't fit. It's like a 50s inspired bike with 80s inspired indicators. Doesn't work. Funny old thing, there's a perfect set of indicators in the accessory catalogue. One cool thing that I hope you can possibly see from here is, if you think back to where I was talking about the R5, is this nickel plated drive shaft here. It's not dipped in chrome, it's nickel plated, just like the olden days. It's such a cool feature. You can see it spinning around, it looks really dangerous. You think about your foot falling in there and you think this is a bad idea, and then you realize that it's probably no more dangerous than a chain and sprocket. So I think it's a great feature. If you've watched anything that Bike World have produced in the last 12 months, you'll see me going through this transitionary period of my riding career where I'm actually into cruisers. I don't mind admitting it. Spent 9 or 10 months on the CVO Road Glide from Harley Davidson. I've got a Sprint Glide, this weird custom supercharged Harley that hopefully will bring you a video of down the line. I enjoyed my time with the Triumph Bobber. I get cruisers. This one isn't a full feet forward highway peg style cruiser. The foot pegs are mid-mounted. These bars, and don't forget there are stacks to choose from, all these kinds of positions. You can find a set of bars that will suit you. You can also add a set of pegs to the top of the heads if you're brave enough and stick your feet out in the breeze. But as it is, the riding position is very, very comfortable. We've done about 300 Ks today, a mix of motorways and like German A and B roads up into the mountains. Cool switchback roads, not particularly fast, probably only did 105 or 10 miles an hour. There's an area of the rev range that's quite vibey. It's about 3,500 revs, and you think, you know, you start to feel the revs vibrating through the pegs, and then you can feel some revs vibrating through your ass, through the seat. And it's only once you've adjusted your riding style to suit that you realize there's a gear up or down that suits the speed that you're doing, that doesn't add any more stress to the motor, but it just smooths everything out. For me, it was typically going up the gearbox, so I'll be rattling along in third, wondering why my teeth feel like they're about to fall out. And then you find fourth, and you think, oh, that's pretty cool. And then there's fifth, and everything's smooth. And then there's sixth, which is as smooth as silk. So in terms of the test ride that you guys will hopefully take, just take your time and fiddle around with the gearbox and find a gear that suits the speed that you're doing and the amount of revs that you're looking for. I know some of you weirdos out there will probably quite like the vibey feeling through your balls that I got today. It's quite nice, to be honest. So as I said earlier, I spent a lot of time on the CVO Road Glide. That's actually shorter in wheelbase terms. I don't want to chuck even more numbers at you, but I think this is 1712 millimeters or something. It's longer than a Road Glide, this bike, but it weighs less. It's 350 kilos fueled and ready to ride. Remember that big blue whale that I raced at Lyddon Hill was 407 kilos fueled and ready to ride. It's quite a lot, 50 odd kilos. It makes a difference. And also, because these pistons aren't going up and down, they're going side to side, it feels like the mass of the bike is even further down than you would get on a Harley. So you've got a really long wheelbase which offers stability everywhere, and then you've also got the mass of the bike sitting lower than a Harley Davidson as well, in my opinion, based on the day of riding that I've had. So you get this really easy direction change, you get a really confidence-inspiring feeling once you've put the thing in a corner, but I wouldn't say it hides its weight as easily as some of the Harleys do. 350 kilos is a lot, especially if you're coming from another sector of the market where that weight matters. It doesn't matter so much to me because I've spent so long riding the things, but the weight is evident. The bike can deal with it, the chassis can deal with it, the brakes can deal with it, but 350 kilos is a lot. So like I say, if you're new to the cruiser sector, try and ignore the weight and just ride it first and then make your mind up. So I've been having a think today while I was riding about who is going to come and buy the R18. There's quite a lot of crossover. You know, you've got Harley guys, obviously the cruiser market in America is ginormous, and only a fool would ignore what's going on at Harley Davidson at the minute. There are some questions over everything that Harley are doing, whether that's board level decisions that are impacting the kinds of bikes that we're riding or not. However you look at it, I think there might be an opportunity for BMW to nick some of that market share over in the States. There's also crossover from two other areas that I think are important. The first is the kind of proving ground that BMW have discussed with me for R18, which was R9T. I asked them today over lunch why they didn't do this 15 years ago. And they kind of said they did with the R9T. That's the bike that proved the kind of modular, custom, individualize, make this bike your own, buy the basic model, structure of custom biking as you and I might know it. So I think there are R9T customers that will have reached the end of the line for them with R9T and they're ready to step up to something bigger. Whether you call it bigger or better is up to you. This is certainly bigger, it's 1800cc. There's also GS customers, I think. BMW owners are incredibly loyal. They're loyal to the whole social scene, they're loyal to their dealer network, they're very loyal to the brand. And much like when S1000RR came out, I can remember the guys that used to walk into their BMW dealership and just tick all the boxes, jump off a GS, jump on the best S1000RR, ride it around the block and realize it's a 200 horsepower flying machine, scare themselves inside out and jump back on a GS. This bike, I think, offers them an alternative as well. When your bones can't cope with putting your rally suit on and jumping on a great big adventure bike. 690 millimeters, I think, the seat height on this. This is a bike that will give you the perfect place to park your ass when you've had enough of riding 1250 GSs. I did have a couple of gripes, I would say, mostly in my ass. Had a numb bum about 3/4 of the way into the day. It was very easy to stand up on the pegs, take a shake and get some feeling back in my butt. But it's important to let you guys know that that stock seat doesn't quite suit every ass. Mustang seats have worked with BMW to provide a huge range of aftermarket accessories, so you will find a seat that suits your bum. In short, after the day that I've had, I'm massively impressed. I love the fact that BMW have waded into the cruiser market and are looking around for the tough guys so that they can give them a bloody nose. This bike's ready to do that. If you're into big inch twins, if you're into custom bikes, if you're into looking cool, I guess, this is a cool looking bike. And if you like the idea of buying into all that heritage, it might not sound the same, Kartoffeln, translate that if you will, but it does exactly the same thing. BMW R18, it's worth a test ride.